Hey, what's up, everybody? Michael Reeder here, host of the SRA podcast. Another episode today we've got Ken Lineberger from Water's Edge Wineries. And everyone, our podcast. We are a podcast for all things entrepreneurship, franchising, business ownership, human optimization, everything that we do in wellness to optimize ourselves as a human being. So I'm excited today to have the CEO and founder of Water's Edge Wineries, Ken Lineberger. Ken, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Great. Thank you, Michael, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. The pleasure's all mine. How much wine have you drank today so far?
What time is it yet? Just talk about the hour.
So Ken, you're out on the West Coast, correct?
We are, yeah. We're down in Southern California.
Okay, awesome. And I see those. I see some. What is that behind you? Seems like that's where the sausage is made or the wine is made, right?
Yeah, it's much prettier to make wine, and it smells a whole lot better than sausage. That's for sure. The background behind me is actually a backdrop of our Kalispell, Montana location. That's their winemaking area up there. So they opened up in the midst of the pandemic in 2020, and they've been going great guns. So Kalispell's kind of northern Montana in that section, probably about 40 miles from the Canadian border, and a very, very wealthy vacation playground. We do quite well up there.
Wow, very cool. So our audience, everyone listening, but there's a lot of people that are looking to get into business ownership via the franchise route. And when someone out there thinks of franchising, wineries are not what comes top of mind for them. So before we get into all of that, please Ken enlighten us on just your background in the wine industry, because I think it's really fascinating.
Sure. Yeah, no problem, Michael. It has been a fascinating path. We started the very first location, and when I say we, I mean my wife, Angie, and myself, began the first one way back in 2004. And it was here in Rancho Cucamonga, California. And I was determined to figure out two things. One is, could I create a winery without having to grow any grapes? I was not interested in the agriculture side of the business at all. So could we separate the farming or the what's called the viticulture in the industry from the viniculture of winemaking? That's the process of making wine. And that was part one. Part two is, could I build a model that was scalable and repeatable, that we could teach it to other people and allow them to be successful at being their own winery wherever we placed one of these? And so after about 8 years, we had the answers to both of those definitively. It documented everything. And we began the franchising process in 2012. We opened up several locations out here in the West and ultimately spread all the way out to the East Coast and the Southeast and the Midwest. So today we're operating about 20 locations coast to coast, from areas as far and close as California, Long Beach, California, out to Texas, Oklahoma. We have several in Ohio. We've got new ones going into Norfolk and near Philly, Pennsylvania. So there's a lot of opportunity out there that we've been expanding into. And essentially what we do, Michael, is we don't grow the grapes or crush the grapes. So those two parts of the winemaking process, we're not a part of. We have all of that done. We outsource all of that because that's a big, messy process. It's very costly, and there's a lot of risk associated in the agriculture side of the winemaking business. So we've taken that out of the equation, and basically what that allows us to do now is put a winery in any suburban or urban area. Because we're not tied to any local vineyards or agriculture, we can bring that in from all over the world. We're not beholden to what we can grow in that state, which is why we're able to make such fantastic wine in the places that I just mentioned, which are not normally known for growing great grapes to make wine with.
Got it. Very cool. So I am not a wine guru like yourself, and I'm sure like several people that are listening right now. So what goes into a winery? Like, so when a customer walks into a Water's Edge winery location, is it retail? Do they have wine? Like, is there a place where they can sit and buy, a glass right there and maybe some cheese or something else there, or are you just selling wine product for them to take out like they're going to a grocery store? Like, what is the winery experience for, a simple person like me?
Sure. And we love all folks to come into our wineries. We have people obviously that know wine well and understand it well and speak the lingo as you might think, all the way to people that are novices. They've never had a chance to really experience a winery, don't know a lot about it. We love that. We love to get them excited, get them involved. And so when you walk into one of our wineries, we don't call them customers at our place. We call them guests. Because they are our guests in the hospitality industry, want to treat them like that. So our guests come into our wineries and they have a whole host of options in front of them. They can certainly order wine by the glass, but they can also do a tasting or a flight of wines. So if they just want to get a sampling of some of the wines that we're making there to be able to determine what it is they like or perhaps don't care for as much, that's where they would do a tasting in the lineup there. We also combine our winery with a bistro style food menu. So what that looks like are paninis, flatbreads, charcuterie, salads, desserts. Sometimes we go outside those boundaries a little bit at some of our locations, but it's meant to be simple food, not meant to be a full restaurant. We're not trying to operate a full restaurant operation to keep the whole operation fairly easy to operate. And so we combine the food and the wine. And then what's really great is we also combine a wine club with our model. So our owners are continually marketing and promoting the wine club aspect, which allows our guests to join. And in relationship with that joining, they then get to be a member of the club. They get a couple of bottles of wine every month. They get complimentary tastings whenever they come in. They usually get discounts across the board on everything that they order subsequently as well. So the wine club is an extremely popular way to go because everybody that comes into our wineries, or nearly everybody, is local. They're not traveling in, 2, 3, 4 hours away. So when they come in, they're maybe a 20-minute drive away. They'll come in a week later and they'll want to enjoy the benefits of being a club member. So being a club member in our places is a pretty popular thing.
Yeah, that sounds really cool for wine enthusiasts, whether they are enthusiasts and professional wine or novices. To your point, I can just imagine that the experience walking into a Water's Edge winery is much more enjoyable and just holistic, whatever the words are, all good words, compared to going to their grocery store or a liquor depot down the street where it's just, because it's that whole winery experience. And I think that's really cool. And that really sets you apart.
It definitely does. That's exactly, you hit the nail on the head when you said the word, Michael, experience. That's what we're about, because in most states that we operate, that the consumer can purchase wine in a variety of different places. Many states now, you could frankly go by your local gas station and pick up a selection. I'm not sure it's any good, but you certainly can do that. So wine availability is not what we're trying to solve. What we're trying to solve is the ability for the consumer to have a winery experience. And one of the things that I found interesting is that about 44% of all the wineries in the United States are in just 6 states. So there's 44 states. When I do math, that's why I pay you accountants to do what you guys do, because I'm no good at it. 44 states that have only 20% of the wineries. And so we really have a huge opportunity to bring that experience to the consumer and allow him or her to come in on a regular basis to a place like ours and be a part of the winery lifestyle, not just going and picking up a bottle of wine at a packaged goods store. Right.
And so speaking of that experience, when a guest arrives, what is it normal for a guest going to a winery for the experience to stay for 30 minutes? Do they stay for 2 or 3 hours? Is it is it like there, of course there's variances, but what is that winery experience coming? Because I would imagine that people want to stay a while. They're not just going to come in and get a bottle and leave.
Yeah, our table turn, our average seat turn is north of 90 minutes in most instances. So people are hanging out. They come in on a Friday afternoon after work with their girlfriend or their spouse or their boyfriend, and they want to sit down and relax for a while. They want to have something to eat. They want to be. Wineries are very social in nature. So quite often you're either coming with somebody else or you wind up talking to other people there. It's like going to a party and meeting people you may not necessarily know or know well. And so it's a very social atmosphere for people.
Yeah. Absolutely. My wife is Bulgarian, and we go to Bulgaria a lot. And that's a great hidden gem for wine. But what's very common, not just in Bulgaria but European culture, is when you sit down for dinner with friends, family, it can go for 3 or 4 hours at least. Do you see that sometimes where guests come and they'll stay for 3 hours just, enjoying the experience?
Oh yeah, all the time. In fact, we offer music at most locations, or live entertainment, I should probably say, Fridays and Saturdays especially. And people will come in specifically to be a part of that entertainment and listen to it. So they're basically there for 2-3 hours during the time the entertainment is going on. So yeah, people absolutely stay for a long period of time. And by the way, speaking of European wines, we've got a new program that we're just rolling out going into next year, and it's called our International Series. We've actually partnered with wineries in Armenia, a couple of them, and a winery in Italy, and we are bringing in under our label. They're bottling it and branding it under Water's Edge. These wines that are just absolutely incredible, varietals that are not common or commonly sold here in the United States. And the wines, most of them are reds, but they will be sold at our winery locations across the United States going into next year, and it's what's known as our International Series. So it is wine that is produced offshore for us, whereas normally we produce it all at our locations. But this wine is just something really special. So we're really excited. This is brand new for us, and we're really hoping to expand the opportunity to put an international footprint of wines that are produced in wineries that have rich histories, rich culture, and be able to sell those at our winery. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all can agree that we know that Italy is a place for great wine, but Armenia, so that seems like another hidden gem that's known for wine. Or maybe that's not known for wine, but now people that are listening now are, Armenia has some good wine as well.
Yes, Armenia has some of the oldest wine growing regions on the planet. In fact, some of the original mason jars that wine was fermented in, dating all the way back to the days of Christ, have been found in Armenia to show that they really have a rich winemaking history. It's just incredible, and we're excited to bring that forth onto American shores here.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds really cool. Now, you said something earlier, Ken, that was really important. You and Angie started the entrepreneurial endeavor in 2004, but at that point it wasn't franchise model yet. Franchise model didn't come until 2012. And so yes. Why that's important. So people, if you're listening, because a lot of our audience are aspiring business owners, and they want to look towards the franchise industry as a way to make business ownership work as that next chapter, as opposed to corporate employment, or as a semi-passive absentee investor while they're still working corporate. I say that because people, if you're listening, listen closely to this. What Ken said there, what's really important about that is there's an 8-year gap. There's an 8-year gap between when Ken and Angie started to figure it out, to start that business model and to perfect it, right? Just like all business owners out there, right? We trial error, see what works, what doesn't work, perfect the model. And so the fact that Ken had 8 years in between when he started the entrepreneurial independent endeavor to then he converted to franchising, that's a great sign for the strength of the franchise model. And so Ken, what was it like? And that year 6, year 7, year 8, when did you and Angie start? Okay, we've got now we're ready to how did what was the story of when you what was the the path of when was it when it was just like, okay, well, now we're ready to franchise it? Obviously after 8 years, but was franchising always the goal in 2004? Like, when did franchising start to enter your head?
It really was. So I came from a corporate background. I was a sales manager for a pretty large software company who managed the whole western half of the U.S. for them. And so I understood the value of what a corporate structure, what infrastructure brings to an organization, and the ability to support people from day one. And so my goal when I started this, as I mentioned, was really to figure out two things. Could I scale it and make it repeatable? And could I do this without having to grow any grapes? So those were from day one when we started and opened the doors. That was what I wanted to figure out is if those two question marks could be resolved. And so really the process was, first of all, you have to create processes in franchising, because you can only teach people processes. You can't just teach them ideas or teach them, general concepts. They have to know what they're doing and make it repeatable every single time, so you have consistency across the brand. And then secondly, you have to plug in suppliers who can support that effort. And that sounds easier than it is, because there's a host of suppliers out there for our industry, from food to the raw product, the juice or the grape must, to even finished wine, and then all of the different pieces in between. There's just probably, I would say, on our approved supplier list, we probably have about 60 different suppliers that we interact with and tell our franchisees that these people know what we do and how we do it, and they'll support you. So building that network, and qualifying and disqualifying people during that process are two of the most difficult things, is to document it, make the processes, and then secondly, build up the supply chain network so that your franchisees can rely upon it in order to operate their business model. And part of that has to be a coast-to-coast supplier network if you're going to operate coast-to-coast. So that was probably the heavy lifting. And then the third part of it is the legal aspect of it. Franchising is a very regulated industry by the Federal Trade Commission, and in most states by many states that have to approve what's called the Franchise Disclosure Document, the FDD, which is a big document that tells somebody everything they need to know about a franchisor. And you have to be squeaky clean to have an FTD and know that people can rely upon it to make good business decisions. So those were probably the three biggest things that I took on when we first started this to start to build, and it took 8 years to build it. Yeah.
It's good that 8 years, these things take time. It's an endeavor that doesn't take 8 months. And so 8 years is no joke. And for you people listening, for the audience listening, thinking about franchise ownership, as you get more immersed in franchise industry, the franchise model, regardless of industry, if you don't know it already, then there's this thing called a royalty. And what Ken just said right there, so a royalty is an expense that you pay each month to the franchisor, percentage of revenue. And so that's an expense on your income statement that you wouldn't have if you were independent. But if you were independent, for all you people listening out there, if you were independent, everything, and he said more than this, but that nationwide supplier network. You are going to have, if you're independent, you're going to have to go figure all that stuff out, and you can do it. But during those 8 years from day one to when Ken and Angie went the franchise route, Ken got it figured out. And so you're paying that royalty. So more often than not, when you're paying a royalty as a franchisee, you're saving in other expense categories on your income statement, such as all of the costs that you're going to pay to suppliers that you're going to have to cultivate your own relationships. And you're not just paying money, but you're also, cost is more than just the monetary aspect of cost, right? There's also time, and there's stress and aggravation. And so what Ken did, and I commend you and Angie, Ken, for, you built up that supplier network. That was one of multiple things that you did in those 8 years. But And I'm sure that it's a fluid thing. You always have to, check in with your suppliers and keep those relationships strong. And, sometimes some get out of the game and new ones come in, and that's an ongoing thing. But that is one less thing that a franchisee has to worry about if they were to go the franchisee route. in the winery business with Water's Edge, for example, versus going independent?
Yeah, it really is. And the other big advantage of being a part of a franchise system, in addition to having a proven model, a proven system that you're just simply repeating in your particular community, is you still get to be a business owner, right? You're no longer working for corporate. So it is your business, and you get to run it, depending on the franchisor, to a certain degree within your own latitude of how you want to do that. But you don't have to figure it all out from scratch. But the other big part of it is you feel like you're part of a network and a family. And I hear this all the time from my franchisees is, I know I've got other fellow franchisees that are doing the same thing I am, and I can pick up the phone and call them. I'm not a competitor. I'm not some stranger. We've met at meetings. We talk to each other once a month on the phone with our franchise calls that we have with everybody. So there's a relationship of networking, because every business owner has challenges. And it's so nice to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody else in your own peer network group that knows your business, knows what you're doing, and you can describe a problem to them or a challenge or looking for ideas, and they go, aha, I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's very vital in why you join a franchise, is it creates that network group think that allows you to find better solutions than you might on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Franchising, as the saying goes, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself, for all those reasons mentioned, Ken. And everyone, of course, I'm a CPA, so I have to say this, right? Even if you're a franchisee, you're still self-employed, right? And so you're self-employed. The Internal Revenue Code is written for the self-employed versus the strictly W-2 employee. So all the more reason to be self-employed. Another benefit is it's great for income tax purposes as well. Ken, I think it's so cool, because most people, when they think of the lay person, someone who doesn't really know anything about franchising, when the word franchising pops up into the mind of a lot of people out there, they think of QSR, right? Like McDonald's, Taco Bell, KFC, or they think of franchise like, the National Football League or like MLB. And so there are so many industries that have the franchise model in them. Pretty much like every industry probably has, and that's what's fascinating about the franchise model, is once you start doing research, and there's a lot of great franchise consultants out there that do great work. They're working with their prospective, they're working with their candidates, and during that education process, the good franchise consultants know that what they're doing is they're educating their candidates about the franchise industry. And during that process, a big thing there's like, wow, there's so many industries in which the franchise model exists. And so before I met you, Ken, there's home services, there's health and wellness, there's this and that. And I wasn't even thinking that a winery is that there's a winery franchise until I met you. And Water's Edge Wineries, so for people out there that want to be their own boss, that want to look to franchising as the solution to that, do they need to, and of course, franchising is a two-way street. It's a mutual vetting process. Franchisees are not just vetting the franchisor, the franchisor is vetting the franchisee. The magic happens when that franchisee-franchisor relationship is working in harmony for both sides. But what I'm getting to is, does a prospective franchisee who really is interested in Water's Edge, do they need to have any certain background about wine, or can they come into it with, really knowing nothing about wine? Like, they can smell a Merlot or a Cabernet or a Pinot Noir and really not know what the difference is.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most common questions I get out there. And so that's a really great question. Very on point, Michael. The people that I want to bring into our system, that, as you mentioned, I have to vet them as well as them vetting us, is I need people who are passionate about wine. Now, remember, passion doesn't mean knowledge. In fact, if I tell people that really to be a wine, to know what you like in wine is all I care about. Do you know what you like? I don't care if you know a lot else outside of what you like. So we can teach the wine knowledge to people. We can bring them in. I can teach them all about the vineyards in Italy and France and Australia and all the places that we bring in product from to be able to sell on our shelves. But what I can't teach is that passion. So I want people who are wanting to share with others about wine. They love talking about wine. They probably have at least some semblance of some kind of a wine collection, not necessarily extensive or expensive, but they love having wine in their house and they love entertaining with it. So that's really the first qualifier that I look for when I talk to people. I talk to a lot of brokers out there who link us up with people who are interested. And one of the things I tell the brokers is if you bring somebody in who doesn't care if they open up a dry cleaning business or a QSR or a print shop, I mean, it doesn't matter to them what kind of business they open. They're just looking to open up any kind of business. And I happen to fall into that, that popcorn of what they're looking at. I'm not interested in them. I don't want to talk to them. I want somebody that when you mention a winery to them and owning their own winery in their own community, they light up. They really, a light bulb goes off and says, wait a minute, I can open up my own winery here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Yes, we could open up a winery in Cincinnati, Ohio. So that's really the folks that I'm looking for. They're passionate. And number two, I would say, just to add a little bit more to that, it really helps in this business. My owners who do the best and are most successful are very outgoing people. They like being around other people. They're what you might call extroverted. They don't need to be salespeople, but they do need to be enjoying being around other people and talking with other people. If you're more introverted, if you more want to really sit in an office and work on spreadsheets and be more introverted in the nature of what you love doing, this probably is not going to be a fun fit for you, because this is a very people-oriented business, and we have to love people and really love bringing people into the business and talking about it. So that's another key component I'm always looking for in people.
Yeah, great points. And do franchisees do they need to be owner operator out the gate? Could they be semi-passive out the gate? Would they need to be owner operator out the gate and then maybe phase in? Phase into semi-passive? What do you prefer? What type of owner? What type of franchisee do you prefer in that context?
Most of our owners come into this as a husband-wife, where one of the spouses is going to continue to work a job that provides income while the business gets started up and keeps things going. Health insurance stays intact without having to go get your own health insurance, things like that. So more often than not, now I will tell you that the majority of my wineries are actually owned and operated by women. And the women in our system tend to do better than the men do, because they understand this is a very female-driven business in terms of who's being attracted as our prime demographic coming in. So all that being said, it's usually a couple, not always, but usually is, and one spouse remains employed. Now, they will come in and they'll work at it very hard while they get it started up, and then after they get it going for about the first 12 months. And after 12 months, they really should have a team in place, a general manager, or at least a strong associate manager in place that can operate the place when they're not there. They get to be there when they want to be there. And so they don't have to work every Friday night and Saturday night. So that's been the path that I've seen virtually all of our owners take. And within the first 12 months, they're pretty much off. They can go do their own thing. If that's being in the winery a few days a week or however much they want, that's usually how it goes. So they're not tied to the winery full time after about 12 months. Could we do an absentee, or semi-absentee? Absolutely. The only requirement that would have is you have to hire a general manager who is competent and capable of running the operation and goes through our training so they know how to run it. And then they could be a passive owner with the operation. But I haven't had anybody yet want to do that, only because in this model, they want to be a part of it, right? They want to be in the middle of it. It's not just a revenue generating operation. It's a passion operation that they want to be in the middle of. Yeah.
I always talk about that with my CPA firm clients, because several of them are business owners, and several of them are new business owners. And it's one thing to make money, right? Let's get that all out of the way. We all want to make money. We understand that. But a big part of being a business owner is the lifestyle of a business owner, the autonomy of schedule, working for yourself, and all that goes into that. When there are, there's no shortcuts around it. Like there are times when you have to work hard versus other times, and during ramp up, there's really no way to shortcut that unless you're a guru. And so lifestyle, the whole lifestyle component of being a business owner is as important, if not more important, than the financial aspect. The earnings potential that one is seeking. And then that's like earnings potential it's subjective with the person. You can have person A who's just looking to make, this much money, and then everything over that is gravy. And you have, and this is considered successful, and for their lifestyle. And then you have, person B and person C. And so like how much money can one make is, subjective to the person. And so that's one component of business ownership, entrepreneurship, working for yourself. The other is lifestyle. And I really hear that, Ken. I really hear that what a great lifestyle this franchise opportunity with Water's Edge presents for franchisees. It's a passion business. I just know that there are people listening out there that are like, you are bringing this into their ecosystem for the first time, that this is even a possibility. And it must be so exciting and gratifying and just check the boxes, and like you said, like your franchise, like you've got happy franchisees that love it, and that love goes beyond, like that's the point I'm trying to drive home. It goes beyond the financial aspect. It goes into the lifestyle aspect and owning a winery business. Talk about a great lifestyle there.
It is, Michael. And the thing I tell my owners, that they become rock stars in their community. And what do I mean by that? Well, imagine if you're in a social situation and the conversation always comes up with people you don't know. So what do you do? Oh, I'm a dentist, I own the local UPS store. Things like that are typical in the conversations. But as soon as they get around to our owners and our owners say, well, I own the Water's Edge Winery across town, all of a sudden, all the conversation stops at the event, and everybody sort of is drawn in. What do you own that winery? I've heard about that place, or I've been to that place. It's great. And they become the subject matter of the conversation. And because there's really, I think the last count I saw is there's about 7,000 licensed wineries in the United States. And of those 7,000, about half are owned by large corporations. So there's no individual or no person behind them. So roughly about 3,000, maybe 3,500 wineries in the United States are operated by small mom and pop and proprietor individuals. So it's a fairly rare occupation out there that somebody in a crowd would actually say, hey, I own a winery, we produce wine. So it's a very uncommon type of an occupation that people run across. And as soon as they run across it, immediately everybody wants to know more about it. How do you do that? How does that work? Where do you, tell me about the wines you make? So it becomes an immediate topic of conversation. So it's not just the pride of business ownership, it's the pride of an ownership in a business that people really are attracted to in many ways.
Yeah. Ken, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today. Thank you for just letting everyone out there know what Water's Edge is all about. Water's Edge Wineries. Okay, so let's talk to the consumer first. If a consumer out there, Water's Edge Wineries, is there a central website that can, depending on where they are? Because I heard California, Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio, Virginia, Pennsylvania, depending, people can see where current franchise locations are now, should they want to go and check it out as a consumer? As a guest.
As a guest, that's right. Yeah. As a guest, we'd love to have them into our wineries and experience what we have to experience. Probably the best way to find where the closest one is just to go to our main website, watersedgewineries.com, and look up there's a locations tab at the top, and it'll give you a map, and you can see across the United States where we're located, with many more coming soon. We hope to double in size over the next 2 to 3 years. So you will keep looking for us if we're not near you now.
Awesome. Ken, thank you. I'm going to close on this. I'm going to put you on the hot seat, rapid fire. Okay. If my main course is a ribeye steak, what wine should I pair that with?
100% Cabernet Sauvignon.
Got it. If my main dish is salmon,
You want a dry rosé, something probably either from Provence, France, or something up in the Paso Robles area. They make a lot of great dry rosés up there.
got it. And what about more of a white fish, like a tilapia or a cod? Anything there?
The biggest question mark there, Michael, is how is it prepared? So if it's got something acidic like lemon on it and that type of an acidity, you're probably going to want to go with something with a bit of acidity with it, such as a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Grigio. If it's got more of a grilled flavor to it, more the toasty flavor, you're probably going to want to go with something like a Chardonnay that's been in toasted oak barrels, wine such as that. So it isn't so much the meat as much as it is the flavors of the meat that you want to pair well with the wine.
Got it. Okay. And so, and I just want to close. I was going to go. My last one was going to be pork chops.
Mm-hmm. Pork chops are great with Pinot Noir, especially if they're grilled. That Pinot Noir is a light enough wine that it tends to not overpower that delicate white pork meat, but it's got enough boldness to it to stand up to that grilling flavor and that richness that's in that pork chop as well.
Wow. So people, you can see that I'm talking to the real wine guru here. He not only walks the walk, but you just saw he can talk the talk too. I mean, he knows his stuff. And now you got the brain, you got the gears grinding for what I'm going to be eating and drinking this weekend, Ken. So thank you so much for being a guest on the SRA podcast.
Thank you, Michael. You've been generous as a host. I appreciate it.
Everyone, see you later. Take care.